To the 26th of May, 1828, Nuremberg, Germany. The city is alive with the usual noise of a Monday morning merchants setting up stalls, horses clattering across cobblestones, church bells marking the hour. But near the Unschlitt gate, something has stopped people in their tracks. A teenage boy is standing in the middle of the street. He can barely walk. His feet are bleeding through shoes that fit him like they belong to someone else. He holds a letter in his trembling hand, a letter addressed to a cavalry captain he has never met. He doesn't know the street he's on. He doesn't know the city. He doesn't even seem to know what a city is. When people approach him and ask his name, he produces a sound that is barely language, broken, confused, like someone who learned words from a book but never heard them spoken aloud. The only thing anyone can make out, the only phrase that seems drilled into him like a prayer, is this: "I want to be a cavalryman, as my father was." That is all he has. A phrase, a letter, and a past that, for all the evidence available, does not exist. His name, or the name given to him, is Kaspar Hauser. And in the nearly 2 centuries since that morning, he has become one of the most debated, most mysterious, and most heartbreaking figures in modern European history, not because of what he did, but because of what was done to him, and because the people who did it were never found. The letter in his pocket was dated the same day he appeared, which was immediately suspicious to anyone who thought about it for more than a moment. It claimed to be written by a poor laborer who had taken in an abandoned infant in 1812 and raised him in secret, never allowing the boy outside, never allowing him contact with the world. The author said he had no means to continue caring for the boy, and was therefore sending him to Captain Friedrich von Wessenig of the 4th Squadron of the 6th Cavalry Regiment. The letter read like something dictated to a confused child, rather than composed by a responsible adult. The grammar shifted. The tone was flat in ways that felt deliberate. And tucked inside it was a second note, supposedly written 16 years earlier, from the boy's biological mother, claiming his name was Kaspar and that his father had been a cavalryman. Forensic analysis conducted in later years revealed that both letters had been written by the same hand, same ink, same paper, almost certainly within hours of each other. Someone had manufactured an origin story for this boy, placed it in his hands, and sent him walking toward a destination. What the police encountered when they sat with him defied easy explanation. He appeared to be approximately 16 years old. He was pale to the point of translucency, with the soft, unmarked hands of someone who had never done physical labor, never gripped a tool, never spent time outdoors. His legs were weak. Sunlight caused him visible pain. Loud sounds made him flinch as though struck from behind. He could write exactly one thing, his name, in the practiced, careful scrawl of a child who has written the same 2 words thousands of times and nothing else. He could speak those few phrases, but he had no concept of ordinary objects. When someone held a candle near him, he reached toward the flame without fear or hesitation, having no understanding that it would burn. When shown a painting of a landscape, he walked around to the back of the canvas, searching for the depth he expected to find there, unable to grasp that a flat image could represent a 3-dimensional world. He ate almost nothing. Bread and water, that was the entire architecture of his diet. Any other food made him physically sick, as though his body had never been asked to process it. He slept on the floor. Beds were a concept that required explanation. And yet, and this is the detail that made scholars and scientists travel from across Europe to see him. He learned at a rate that stunned everyone who observed it. Within weeks of arriving in Nuremberg, he was acquiring new vocabulary at a speed that linguists found remarkable. Within months, he could hold complex conversations. Within a year, he was writing detailed accounts of his earliest memories. Those memories, as they slowly surfaced, were devastating. He described a childhood spent in a space he called, in his emerging German, a dark little hole, a room too small to stand in, no light, no sound except, occasionally, footsteps above him or beyond a wall. 2 small wooden horses were his only companions. He slept on straw. Food and water appeared while he was unconscious, so he never once saw the face of whoever brought them. He had, as far as his memory could reach, never seen another human being until the man appeared, the man with the hidden face who came shortly before Nuremberg, who kept himself deliberately obscured, who taught Kaspar the phrase about the cavalryman, gave him the letters, and walked him over what Kaspar believed was several days to the city gate. Neurologists and developmental psychologists who have studied this case across multiple decades note that every detail Kaspar described is consistent with what is now understood about prolonged sensory deprivation from early childhood. The hypersensitivity to light and sound, the underdeveloped musculature, the extraordinary neuroplasticity that allowed rapid language acquisition once stimulation began, the dissociation, the flat effect interrupted by sudden, overwhelming emotional storms that he couldn't name or control. He was not describing a fantasy. He was describing the measurable, physiological consequences of deliberate imprisonment. The city of Nuremberg was captivated, and so was a scholar named Georg Friedrich Daumer, a philosopher and meticulous documentarian who took the boy into his home and began to record everything. It was Daumer who first gave serious intellectual form to the theory that had been circulating in whispers since Hauser's arrival. The theory turned on a date. In 1812, the precise year Hauser's forged letter claimed he had been taken in as an infant. The hereditary Grand Duke of Baden and his wife Stephanie de Beauharnais, who was the adopted daughter of Napoleon Bonaparte himself, had a son who died shortly after birth under circumstances that several contemporaries found quietly strange. Rumors moved through court circles suggesting the infant had not died at all, that he had been replaced secretly, deliberately, with a dying peasant child in order to clear the line of succession for a competing branch of the family. If that child had lived and been hidden, imprisoned, kept in darkness, stripped of every trace of identity, he would have been exactly Kaspar Hauser's age in 1828. The theory has never been conclusively proven, but it has also never been conclusively disproven. And it goes some distance toward explaining what happened next, because someone, very clearly, wanted Kaspar Hauser to stop existing. On the 17th of October, 1829, barely a year after his arrival, he was found in Daumer's basement, bleeding from a wound to his head. He said a masked man had attacked him. The city split immediately. Sympathy on one side, skepticism suddenly sharpened on the other. Skeptics and their numbers had been quietly growing as the novelty of Hauser's story aged suggested he had wounded himself, that the entire account was theater, that he was a disturbed young man performing a history he had invented to secure attention and patronage from people who should have known better. The official investigation moved quickly and inconclusively. Hauser was transferred to new guardians, then to others. He was moved from house to house, examined by courts and aristocrats and military officers who treated him as a curiosity, a cause, or an inconvenience, depending on their mood and their politics. An English nobleman named Lord Philip Henry Stanhope traveled specifically from England to meet him, was convinced of his significance, took over legal guardianship, and moved him to the town of Ansbach under the supervision of a schoolteacher named Johann Georg Meyer. Meyer was not kind. He was rigid, skeptical, and openly contemptuous of what he considered Hauser's emotional instability. The young man, for he was approaching adulthood now, was isolated again, this time not in a dark cell but in a cold house with a cold guardian, in a town where nobody knew his face. He wrote letters during this period that are among the most quietly agonizing documents in the case. He described loneliness in terms that were precise and unsentimental. He spoke of feeling watched. He wrote about a persistent, low-grade fear that he could not name the sensation, that the darkness of his childhood had not ended but had only changed its shape, spread out around him into the texture of ordinary life. On the 14th of December 1833, he came home with a deep stab wound in his chest. He told the people who found him that a stranger had approached him in the court garden with a promise, information about his real parentage. Finally, after all these years, he had followed the man. The man had stabbed him. He died 3 days later. He was, by most estimates, 21 years old.